destined for great things. I think Jupiter is someone who doesn't know if they're worth more. It's someone who doesn't know if they can achieve more. It's someone who doesn't know if there's more to life and kind of sleeps her way through it until somebody or something shakes her.
Wstawaj, wstawaj.
I hate my life.
There are all these people, and I recognize myself as one of them who, at times in their lives, are very unhappy with their lives. And then they go on journeys or they go in search of what they want or what they need.
Everybody can relate to that moment in their life. I mean, at least I know I can. Sometimes you don't know which path to take and you don't really know what road you're on, and something or somebody has to come in and kind of shake you and wake you up and make you realize that there's more to life than just being an empty shell.
And that was sort of the beginning of Jupiter. And like, hey, how about this modern Cinderella whose life is full of drudgery and a crazy family? As fast and as furious as you're almost on top of me.
Let me guess. Another advance.
I'll earn it back.
No. You mean you'll waste it trying to make yourself feel better by buying some... English, please. We use English in this house.
Listen there, buddy. What's happening in that way?
The family of the Bolotnikovs were hilarious. I like that it has a very broad, fun tone. Like Dorothy or Alice. She just goes off and meets people and gets embroiled in the story. We shot a sequence in Chicago that I think represents the city the way I feel about it. It's so romantically shot. She doesn't have to beat people up in order to be the main character.
She's not a superhero. She doesn't have superhero powers. She doesn't know how to work a gun.
It works better if you flip the switch where you thumb.
She's just your everyday girl who gets put into this environment and figures it out.
If there's anything we can do to make the journey easier, you let us know.
Actually, you know what? I'm feeling a little overdressed, so if you maybe have something that I could change into.
She's a recurrence of this other person who was the empress and super powerful, the sovereign, and had wealth beyond imagining.
If she is a recurrence, then this is a hell of a lot more important than wings.
If there was a protector of Cinderella, that's my character. Jupiter is the exact reoccurrence of a royalty's DNA. When that happens, she is basically given the keys to the castle.
Very good.
Yes! Even in her wildest dreams, she never even expected this.
Your Majesty's life is going to change, if she wants it to.
I like that it has this really beautiful romance and that they sort of help fulfill something in each other.
I think Kane senses just an innate goodness in her and just a quality that maybe he doesn't get to experience very often.
Can you say that again? Just the Your Majesty part.
Your Majesty.
Mila's character, Jupiter, has come to the attention of the universe and this family. I think each of their priorities is to kind of lock her down.
Earth was part of your inheritance, wasn't it, brother?
The mother, which Jupiter is the reincarnation of. Just trying to imagine that Mila Kunis is your mother just was all kinds of confusing.
Imagine it for me. Meeting your mother long after she's passed away.
But I am not your mother.
It makes you think of all the sort of Oedipal problems and things that are going on there.
You begged me to do it!
I am not your damn mother.
Mind-boggling, but kind of entertaining.
Apparently, being their mother, I spawned 3 little evil children. I feel horrible for them. They're amazing actors, all of them, and they were so much fun to work with. But as far as characters go, they're crazy.
Khalik is the middle sister, the Abrasax family.
She's like one of the first people that I meet in the film, and so she gets to like take me around and shows me all the grandeur of the planets outside of Earth.
Right now, Balem owns the title to Earth, but once you claim it, the Earth will belong to you.
And then I run into Douglas and tries to sweep me off my feet, tries to seduce me, so he's a little more sensual.
Her Highness looks ravishing.
Kane?
Whoa!
And then I get Eddie, who I had the most fun working with because Eddie, I had to slap Eddie. Eddie, like, he and I had a whole fight sequence together. We had so much fun. It was so, we call it schmacting. Because all we had to do was like, pretend like you're being thrown off of these massive buildings, and it was really fun.
She goes off into space and goes on this crazy Wizard of Oz odyssey to learn things about herself and to come back and realize how much she loves her family and loves her home.
The Wizard of Oz for us is like this heavy touchstone film. It was incredibly important to us growing up, and we watched it every single year it came out at Thanksgiving. And there's a lot of that movie in all of our movies.
I really just want to go home.
The way that home acts as this sort of center of gravity for our lives, and it doesn't necessarily mean where you were born or where you came from, but just your sense of home.
The DNA of that is something that I think happens every time we make a movie, or every time we make a piece of art.
There was a hunter in the Legion, a legend. Track a single gene in the Gaia.
No matter who or what he is, he's after our bounty.
We like the loneliness that Dorothy has when she starts off on her journey and she's kind of alone. And then she's got her dog, and her dog is like her great protector. And so we thought, well, wouldn't it be kind of fun if essentially the romantic lead is also sort of Toto-esque.
You all right?
Who are you?
Kane West. I'm here to help you.
I didn't know what other people were going to be doing. I didn't know if I was going to be moving differently. I just kind of sat with Andy and Lana and was just like, what do you guys want to do? Like, how do you see it? I could be like, you know, doing anything.
And we wanted an actor who is so full of kind of radiant charisma that you're interested immediately, and you sort of discover through the course in the same way you're sort of learning about Jupiter and who she is.
Like intent.
He's a genetically engineered human spliced together of a human and probably what would be a wolf. So it was really interesting to figure out how he would look like, because we didn't want to look like a werewolf. So it's like, what does a hybrid wolf look like? I kept like sending pictures of concept drawings that I would find online.
Everybody's familiar with kind of Wolfman movies, and what we didn't want was that kind of slightly kind of schlock, we've seen it before, kind of Wolfman thing.
You can smell a gene through the universe. Like, what does that look like? You know, you don't want to be like, we've done versions where I'm very, very sense-oriented, and then we've done versions where I'm just like a normal person. We've sort of found something that's not exactly me, but I'm not running around on all fours.
Apart from having to fulfill many stunt-related requirements, the costume had to show off and enhance the best things about him, which are a very physical presence. We managed to do that without showing too much flesh. That was important too. He needed to be kind of mysterious at the same time.
Uh-oh.
I need your help.
Stinger and Kane served together in the military, as it were, in battles. Both brave, strong guys. We need a plan.
We need firepower.
Who have a mutual respect for each other. Kane is the best soldier I ever went into battle with. And then he betrays me.
Kane has an issue with the Royals. They told him that it was in his genes. I don't really know if Kane believes that. I think I just have a problem with the Royals because they're all corrupt and they're all just bad people.
Lies are a necessity. They are the source of meaning.
Jupiter is royal, she has all that power, and she's not corrupt. And that's kind of offsetting to Kane. I think he's immediately thrown by her, but then over time he finds that he doesn't understand why he's drawn to her, because he's been fighting it the whole time. He's just like, This world that I'm in, royals are like this, and I don't like them. And she is an anomaly.
It means, Your Majesty, that your life is going to change. If she wants it to.
Cain and Jupiter, it's very much a chemical attraction in every sense of that word. It's very instantaneous and nondescript.
She has a guardian who protects her, but she doesn't actually have to beat people up in order to be the main character.
We didn't know how Cain was going to fight and use these gravity boots.
Cain is highly trained and he has a certain style which we've tried to develop.
Me and the stunt guys over on the C stage trying to come up with new stuff that the Wachowskis have dreamed up inside of the animatronics. Sort of they map out what they kind of want it to look like, and then we have to try to, you know, do that physically. If there's 4 people, you have to skate in. You got to be able to stop in time to throw a punch or block a punch. As you're turning to the next person, you're on skates, and sometimes the skates aren't going in the right direction that you want them to go in, or you come in too far.
Cain!
I can recover if I come in too far on my feet, but it's harder to do that on skates, you know, if you're not really adept on them. And so you would do that all day long, and then sometimes we never made it to the Wachowskis wanted, and so we have to show up tomorrow and try again. And that was 7 months of that. And we all left blood and sweat.
Stop doing that, Mila.
What I loved about them is that they didn't really know. They kind of wanted to create it with you. They have this idea and they wanted to get here and try new things.
It's been good fun. I've had a lot of scenes with Channing and they've been really good. He's a very handsome, strong guy and he fits the part perfect. And it's been a real pleasure to work with him.
I love Chan. I think it's great. He's so much fun to work with, and he's super gung-ho about anything. And I trust him, and I think in a movie like this, when there's 6 months worth of stunts and wires and very precarious positions, and I fully, wholeheartedly trust him.
And you just have to trust the Wachowskis that they have your back.
Ride's here. You ready?
Ready.
Okay.
This movie is sci-fi.
Good evening, Your Majesty.
This movie is about as sci-fi as you can get.
It's beautiful. It's very big, very detail-oriented.
It's deep, it's profound.
Crazy and exciting.
Some brilliant storylines, to their brilliant action, to their brilliant characters, to everything. It's to the worlds. I'm just talking about you. To the worlds they create.
Lies.
It's not.
I mean, I was the kid in, you know, this theaters the first night of Matrix 1, 2, and 3. To meet the people behind the movie that meant so much to me. It was, you know, one reason why I wanted just to have a meeting with them.
It was just the opportunity to work with artists with originality, who are avant-garde, who are kind of fearless in pursuing their vision.
They have such an extraordinary visual take on the world, the Wachowskis, and they work with such formidable creative talent around them.
It obviously always helps to be working with a team that you're familiar with. Ron and Andy, you know, their big thing is always that they like to have a good amount of prep time to generate ideas. So a lot of the early discussions you can kind of leapfrog and instead get into the things that you each know that you're going to be strong at and can support each other in.
I've been lucky enough to work with them for, well, this is the 6th time, I think, and every time you have a shorthand with these people, and it's fantastic just to get picked straight up where we left off on the last one.
You do get the feeling when you're working for them and being part of a family, the number of people who work as part of their family is huge on the film.
Every movie they do is radically different, and that's one of the things I love about working with them, is you're never caught up in doing the same thing.
Filmmaking has been consumed by the notion of same, and there's great security in knowing what it is that you're making, you know, and everybody wants to be able to see it before. And they're only really interested in original thought. There's not many filmmakers like them anymore who are endeavoring to do something that has never been done.
In general, we're children of the 20th century, and that means that we're drawn to originality. We wished that there was more original material in the world. What's strange about our culture is that we switched almost overnight from a culture that championed originality. Generally, people who are born around when we were born, that sort of 60s through 2000, feel that way. Whereas people who are born after that period actually crave familiarity. Originality was always the primary draw. It was always the thing that made you excited to see something different, see something that you hadn't seen before.
They're not interested in doing anything that doesn't break new ground, not just cinematically, but for them as human beings. This is another part of their continuing evolution.
Lana and Andy, they're really great human beings, I think.
On my very first day, we spent about 2 hours talking about a scene, and we were on set filming, and they had the patience and the interest and the time to really talk about it.
They're considerate and sincere, and I think they love people.
Terry Gilliam appears in our film. We had asked him on a lark, like, who could be the center of the bureaucracy that would be funny.
To actually have Terry Gilliam play one of the roles was very fun, a great idea, because of course it's one of the famous examples of overwrought bureaucracy in Brazil.
I've always been a fan of their work. I mean, they're smart, they're dangerous, and they've done great work, so how can I say no to them?
Damn it.
Told you. As director, they're genius.
It's funny because I see the Wachowskis as just walking Wikipedias.
You only have to spend 3 minutes with Andy and Lana to know that they are two of the most intelligent people you've ever met in your life.
Never had my hair done by a robot before.
You know, the Wachowskis are renowned for their design, their innovation, their imagination. And their imagination is, it's gone right out there.
Trust me, honey, I could do this procedure with my eyes closed.
This is vintage Wachowski, you know, this is them kind of returning back to that, you know, thing that we all loved about the Matrix.
Evolution is just designed to a single purpose, to create profit.
They make you think about things and also give you something that you haven't seen before.
You know, they're adults who love comic books, and they're adults that love sci-fi, and they kind of live in that world, and they want to let everyone experience what's in their head and kind of make it be tangible and make it be palatable.
I'd never worked with a pair of directors, so I didn't know what that was going to be like. But they're one and the same. It's seamless. It's really works really well.
They're closer, I think, than any twins I've met. I mean, they literally do say the same things seconds after each other in different situations.
What can I say that other people haven't said? They finish each other's sentences.
I think each time they do a film, they try something new and they take a risk.
We need a plan. We need firepower.
But I guess that's the what makes it exciting.
This is my family.
It's too dangerous.
Lana and Andy are sci-fi. You know, that's the world they came and grew up from, and I think they know that world probably better than most.
Every little detail is thought of. They see everything, and they're very concise and clear about their decisions, and it's really great to work with people like that because you know it's really well thought out.
Everything's very, very specific in color, in tone, in wardrobe especially. Like, the most detail-oriented directors that I've ever worked with.
And I think you'd be able to tell that because they're so involved in every single brick of the movie. I don't even know if I would call them filmmakers. You know, like they're really the definition of artists, but this is just their big palette.
And the great thing about Lara and Andy is that there are no limits. The only limits are the ones you set yourself. And if you stop setting yourself limits, then you can come up with anything.
When you sign on to the Wachowskis movie, you sort of become Alice, and every day you turn up to set, you down the rabbit hole.
It's not going to be possible for them to write a script that is just dumbed down action movie. You know, they don't do that.
There's no edge to it. It's sort of limitless and eternal in a way. Their imagination
You've been taught that the birthplace of the human race is Earth, but it's not.
Ready?
Ready.
Jupiter Ascending is a fantastic movie. The fact that our locations are tangible and everything is pseudo-realistic, set in a very fantastical world and done by two of the most brilliant directors that exude so much fantasy and make you believe what you're doing even though it's so incredibly unbelievable.
It's like space, it's so exciting. If you're a storyteller, it has the same potential as the imagination. It's just so huge. If you can imagine it, the universe can probably imagine it too.
If you're going to sort of create whole worlds, you really have to design everything, how they live, how they move around, what they wear.
The process of making the costumes for the movie was a lot to do with how the characters were evolving within the world of the movie. As I was making the dresses, and even before I was making the dresses, I was thinking about how I could use the elements, and even in some cases the elements inspired the costume first.
I love working with Kim because we work very closely together and bounce ideas off, and if I come up with something she likes, she'll run with it and design a costume around the makeup, and if she comes up with something fantastic, I can then take a makeup on to complement what she's done. I thought nothing would be harder than Cloud Atlas until Jupiter Ascended. The great thing about Laura and Andy is that they are both very involved, but also very trusting of you to come up with ideas. They have been thinking about this film for so long, and the backstories are all kind of in their head. So we start off with what they think, and then as the character develops and it's costumed, and we do a makeup design for it. The backstory is there, but then we can choose whether it's still relevant or not. So all the rules and the preconceptions you have about what you normally do on a film, you can throw out of the window. It's now about letting your imagination burst out and then try and create images which we haven't seen before and yet identifiable.
Lana and Andy Wachowski create from a molecular level to the expanse of the universe. That is one thing they just do almost better than anyone in the game. What's unique about this sci-fi film is it starts off in a very real, very well-known city.
Familiarity and beginning with familiarity is always a helpful thing in science fiction. It gives you something to ground.
And then you get thrown into this insane sort of world that you have to relearn the rules of.
The Wachowskis typically don't want anything that people have seen before, so we're having to put a lot of work into trying to reconceive, visualize science fiction in a new way.
Andy and Lana have been wanting to do something original and new and thoughtful and visionary.
Your Majesty.
I think that's very brave of them. I play a character called Stinger Rapini, who's half bee and half human.
Stinger?
This is where he is. This is the life he's been kind of forced into, really. It's a bit like exile. They've decided to put him away somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and it kind of reflects his personality to some extent.
Little sets that we did have, the tangible sets, were stunning and beautiful, and all were very much geared towards that characteristic of that character.
Pardon me, Lord Titus.
Only good news is allowed in here.
Titus's set was very grand and a lot of mahogany wood and very sexy and luscious.
Titus enjoys life. My servants are beautiful women, all of them. They're all gorgeous, and it kind of looks like a Playboy mansion.
For Titus's Clipper, we love the design of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, the Nautilus.
The components of the wings float and separate. It's inlaid with gold decoration. The main body of the ship has a complexity of a city. The internals are incredibly detailed and luxurious, like a super luxury yacht.
Why are spaceships so damn ugly? It's unbelievable how ugly they are, and they're ugly in so many movies. in the history of transportation. Every single era or epoch, whether you're talking about boats or cars or planes or trains, they're always a level of exquisitely designed ones, especially the rich people. I mean, rich people always travel in amazing aesthetic style. And so because this is an exploration of class, we were also curious about the spaceships for the super rich. What do they look like?
I confess I feel I have you at somewhat of a disadvantage.
Is that because you kidnapped me?
I think Titus is a great guy. I think he's just out to have fun. When it doesn't always go his way, he's like, oh well, next time.
Where am I?
This is the Alcazar of Kalik Abrasics.
What's an Alcazar?
A fancy way of saying my home.
I am Kalik.
The intent was to represent it as an almost natural space that she had come across in perhaps her travels through the universe. So we looked at some of the most extraordinary vegetation and landscapes on our planet. We photographed waterfalls and landscape in Iceland, but then we colored the vegetation. They're all pushed very kind of purpley and red to match with the planet Ceres, of course.
The Alcazar of Kalik, where I live, is luxurious and very beautiful.
Candles everywhere and very Moroccan-ish.
The palace itself was a mixture of aesthetics that included things like the Natural History Museum in London, because we went there to shoot practically some of the sequences, and more Turkish, Middle Eastern looks to some of the structures and towers.
Come, let me introduce you to the possibilities of your new life.
She's very much about beauty. It's a kind of calm, indulgent, decadent world that she lives in.
Feel my skin.
The worlds Lana and Andy create are so wonderful. I can't think of anything this original since I saw Star Wars. It really is establishing that totally independent world.
Welcome, Your Majesty, to the overpopulated, oozing cesspool we humbly call home.
Auris is described as the birthplace of humankind. Earth is really just one of many subsequent colonies that have been set up. So the sense of age and history that we wanted to convey with Auris was massive. Just piling this place up with a massively overpopulated, over-industrialized world.
Greetings, Your Majesty. I am Intergalactic Advocate Bob, here to assist you through the ascension process.
It has moons that have built up structures on them. The planet itself has these vast rings that slowly orbit and rotate around the planet like a vast gyroscope. Auris is, I always thought, was one of the more beautiful designs that we came up with.
And then you had Eddie's character set. Which looked like a scary, frightening dungeon.
He's a damaged, evil human being. He's softly spoken. He demands respect from people.
And I want her found, and I want her dead.
There's clearly a lot of complicated things have happened to take him to the extremity that he lives at.
We did stick faithfully to the look of Jupiter as we know it from interplanetary probes for the exterior. But as you approach it, even the exterior, we introduced this idea of a spinning vortex that ships can take to lead them into a layer beneath the gases that is Belem's compound. The design for that was to build something that was a vast industrial space. So we built a lot of strange looking, complicated, very, very detailed components and piping and gas jets. The idea was to have the swirling, ferocious gases of Jupiter itself always present as a character, really visible, just being somehow held back from completely destroying the place.
It's just such an extraordinary combination, this film, of something completely contemporary and modern and something science fiction and original. I have no idea how they've managed to meld all those worlds, but they have.
Lana and Andy created a world that will open your mind to understand that we are just a very small grain of sand in a ginormous beach of other possibilities.
The Wachowskis are the most detail-oriented directors when it comes to like sets and design that I've ever worked with. It's so in their head that even when they describe it or when you read the script, it never quite makes sense until you visually actually see it.
futuristic world. They have people that are called splices, and splices are genetically engineered tools people who do a specific job.
Indigenous species have been kind of spliced, as it were, and mixed to develop hybrids.
I was told there would be hybrids, there'd be robots, there'd be humans, but they all have a kind of added element. They could be spliced with another species or synthetic humans.
Really, we haven't done creatures per se with the Wachowskis up until now, so this is another new foray for them.
Very early in the film, for instance, one of the backstories on the hybrids is that they are kind of created in these kind of like workshops, and then they're given this branding stamp by the splicer who makes them.
The stamp, you know, the mark of the splicer that bred us, me and Kane.
Marcella and Cahoon was in there. She looked bees.
We're working now on Earth on the whole genetic mutations and using gene technology to change things.
Science fiction, taking that to the next level, is involving how people might combine the genetics of different species.
Cherry pick the best from a snake to combine with a human to give that human extra kind of capabilities in the area for which it's designed. The first thing I worked on was the hybrids, because we had to tread carefully and try and find a balance between it not being too over the top and so daft looking. We've all seen those films with animals walking around with 2 arms and 2 legs, and it's just a kind of pull-on mask, and we're trying to avoid that.
We worked to sort of figure out, okay, how to approach these splices and how much to approach it as a physical, practical, kind of photographic reality, and how much we would enhance digitally, and always try to find the right handshake there to achieve the goal.
So we'd have a range of hybrids from very subtle, which Kane is a very subtle splice, to something like Nesh, which you'll see in the Aegis crew, who is almost like a full-on elephant. So we wanted to get that kind of range of genetic combinations.
I contend.
The character that came to be Kane, the first thing that you read is that he's a hybrid wolf. I had no idea what that was going to be. Are they going to CG my face?
Everybody's familiar with kind of Wolfman movies, and what we didn't want was that kind of slightly kind of schlop, we've seen it before, kind of Wolfman thing.
He didn't want to look like a werewolf, so it's like, what does a hybrid wolf look like?
There were a lot of concept drawings that I inherited when I arrived, and then I did a lot more, and it's finding that fine line between cutesy and horror. We end up being much more subtle than we started off, so now all you see is ears, and there's just a little bit of hair inside his ears, and his hair has a non-hair quality by using sort of colours and paints. It's a much more subtle version than we started out with, and I think it's all the better for it.
We have a whole myriad of hybrids and various non-human characters who populate the world and give it variety.
I'm playing a character called Chicanery Knight, who is a kind of bioengineered, half-human, half-rat. He's rat-like in his appearance as well as in his manner. When they wrote that part, they made him crossed with that kind of a creature for a reason, and did hair and makeup tests just for a day. And I had a whole different costume when I first came in. It was like a long dress. Just a process of kind of coming in, trying things on, saying that looks right, that doesn't look right. And we ended up with what we got, which I love. But I didn't realise it was going to be quite so much makeup. They said, it'd be a little prosthetic. I just sit in a chair for 2.5 hours every morning and get a prosthetic attached here and 2 bits here, and then a wig put on top. I see you have the standard issue of Brassic's temper.
Back from the goddamn dead.
I play a character called Stinger Rapini, who's half bee and half human, hence the kind of hive-like hair design. I have special powers. Kind of just subtle things, little touches here and there. I mean, I guess it's very difficult to actually act like a bee. He's very fast. He's kind of alert. He understands the kind of hierarchy of a bee population, which is quite fascinating. But, I guess we decided to play more human. So I just have things in my hair. I believe that I'm going to have kind of hexagonal eyeballs, pupils.
Trust is an illusion, milady. I believe only in mutual self-interest. They want another life. We can offer it. The character I'm playing is Maledictes. He's the sort of leading minister to Queen Kalik, and he's a rather strange creature because he's a cross between an owl and a human being. He's supposed to be a very wise, helpful minister to the Queen. The owl-like qualities are largely being given to me by a prosthetic piece. They give me a sort of beaky thing and a head, but you have to have a whole head cast done. The first time we did it, it took maybe 3 hours, and now probably it's just over an hour. The design by Kim on this movie is absolutely staggering.
But with Maledictus, we knew that he was an owl hybrid. It seemed believable that the texture and the structure of his costume could evoke the feeling that he had a kind of feathered look. And of course, there's very minimal amount of feathers on his costume, but I think from far away you feel like it has that illusion.
Now, where is Her Majesty?
There are two key creatures in this film that were entirely CG. The Sargons, which are these giant winged lizard creatures.
I play Gregan, who's a 7-foot lizard who flies, and also a man with scales and big feet.
The character is over 7 feet tall. He's probably twice as wide, twice as thick as a big man. He's got a 20-foot wingspan.
It's kind of like a mixed match of genetics, really, and we are always going to be looking for the perfect army. You'd think what would be the perfect genetics modification to create that person. So you probably would put an ape there, wouldn't you? You put a little bit of lizard because of the armor. You want the agileness of a wolf. You want the human quality, the intelligence of a human quality. So that's what it is. That's what the whole world's about. It's creating perfect sections of life. You know, Gregan, the Sargons are the perfect warriors and a perfect killing machine.
They wanted a lot of physical interaction between the creatures and their actors, just to sort of add to credibility.
Slam and kill!
And that always involves a lot of careful planning of how to really design that interaction and achieve it.
So in order to try and create something to interact with Channing, we've experimented with putting stunt guys on power risers.
So it took 3 weeks, a lot of falling down, a lot of standing up, and a lot of falling down again. It was one of those things where you just had to get used to doing it. The stunt guys were amazing. They really pushed me. I was really determined to kind of make sure I could move quite freely. In the end, you kind of see these stilts as something as another appendage, really. They're just my legs, but they're longer. But the problem we had was that basically you couldn't stand still. That was one of my major problems.
The limitations of that, they always kind of feel like they're on stilts. Moving around, the agility's not so good. So what we did is we've hired a English gentleman, Neil, 7'7", 340 pounds, to try and simulate the actual physicality close to what the Sargon will actually look like.
3, 2, 1, action!
On the other end of the scale, the Keepers, which were the smaller, shorter, wirier, classic alien-looking species, they were challenging because they're smaller than humans, even though they're somewhat bipedal. It's not easy to have somebody, even a small person, stand in for them. They also wanted their movement to be very kind of almost spider-like or twitchy and alien and kind of unnerving. We did things like take joints, like the knee joint, and bend it backwards deliberately, so that it gives them this very weird look and movement.
The great thing about Laura and Andy is that they are both very involved, but also very trusting of you to come up with ideas, and they're always very generous in their approval or dismissal. It makes you brave and courageous to be in that environment where you're encouraged to be kind of out there and create things that might not work, but at least have a go.
When you work on a film like this, you get to work with not just people that are kind of good at their job, it's people that are the best in the world at their job.
This is a fantastic invention. I mean, the characters that you see standing around on the set are absolutely extraordinary. Quite tough on the guys who have to stand there all day in these big rubber heads, the girls on great big shoes and rubber suits.
When you walk on set and you just see all these colourful and amazing characters that have just built from someone's imagination, and you're like, God, this world is, I want to be part of it. You wonder where they come from, and they're so detailed with the way they want things to be and the way things should look. I'm just stunned by it.
Every day you go on set and there's something new. There's someone with big, crazy blue eyes, and you'll be sat somewhere and they'll just be staring straight ahead, and you can't tell who they're looking at. It's these strange robot masks. All of the design is so well thought through, and they're very specific about what they want. The makeup team or the costume team will go to Andy and Lana and say, what do you think of this? Every little detail is thought of. They see everything, and they're very concise and clear about their decisions, and it's really great to work with people like that because they have such a clear vision that you know it's going to be something that's from the heart and that's really well thought out.
some killer action sequences in this film that have taken a lot of planning.
If you're a storyteller, it has the same potential as the imagination. We were like, let's go huge and imagine everything we can.
Are those flying boots?
They use the force of gravity, redirecting it into differential equation slopes that you can surf.
Yeah, I heard gravity and surf.
It was clear that it was a very large universe that they pictured. They like to have a good amount of prep time to generate ideas. We were beginning tests with stunt material. They wanted action sequences that were both exciting but felt very, very real. We built a huge half pipe in Berlin to start figuring out body languages.
We were training in Germany on the biggest ramp ever built, trying, some crazy trick with a wire, with a special machine that makes us fly in the air.
We didn't know how Kane was going to move and use these gravity boots, try to figure out what that looks like.
In some of the way they work, they generate kind of friction to gravitational force. It's not quite enough power to literally jetpack off and rise up into the air.
They're not flying boots, they redirect the force of gravity, so what does that mean?
One of the reasons for building a skate ramp was that you generate real momentum and physicality, that it's not just somebody hanging on a rig. They really move and have to move themselves.
You just try something, they set up a shot that they like, and then you're like, okay, you see what you can do. And you do one, they're like, okay, we really like that one, maybe try and really look like you're surfing.
If you can twist at all.
So it's an ever-evolving process of the boots.
They do like that process of being able to kind of see some ideas, realize that even they may be surprised by something new sometimes. Development, conceptual design stuff was very transformative in some ways for them because we did a lot of location work. We were trying to find something that felt different.
Where am I?
You're still in Chicago.
It was super exciting to really shoot for real and significantly in Chicago, a city that's extremely beautiful.
The architecture is extremely important to Chicago.
It has a number of great angles. Everywhere you look can really be great backdrops for, whatever you want, whether it's dialogue or action.
All chases are usually super high sun, daylight sun, or nighttime because you need all of that time because the chase has so many pieces and so many parts.
We hit upon this look that looks like you've treated it. And yet it's actually real. It's the color temperatures mixing.
Because the sun has a clear, low angle into the city, there's this moment where the light ends up glowing.
We shot a lot of time-lapse to look at what the city was like in different lights.
We took John Toll up to the top of Willis Tower. It's only about 5 minutes before the sun breaks. We watched it and it was like glorious and beautiful. And he's like, yeah, wow, looks great, amazing. What do you want to shoot here? Like establishing shot of a kiss scene? And we said, we want to shoot the chase.
Hold tight!
The Shadow Chase, to me, it was a very exciting combination of real photography in terms of plates, real stunts. It spanned all the way to suspending 2 stunt actors from a helicopter and being flown through the city streets of Chicago.
Because we wanted it to be real, so we were flying real stunt people, and we took Mila and Channing up there, and we shot with real live humans.
They're very sensitive to digital animation of, whether it's human beings or characters, that lacks the real weight and physicality.
This chase scene is made by the fact that we have 2 people hanging by this helicopter. You can feel the weight and the way their bodies react and break apart and catch, and then little bits of detail where their boot flies in a certain direction.
You look down, you're like 40 feet above ground, or like in the middle of Chicago on a crane, underneath the L train, like swooping by, and you're hanging like backwards, upside down.
It's the real life actors doing it. It's not some CG pixels doing things. It's me and Mila getting thrown around and ripped back and jumping off stuff, or a stuntman. Because you can always sort of tell.
We think there's just something that you react to as an audience when you see a live human sort of in the jeopardy of hanging from a helicopter that you will never ever achieve with CG.
I love to fly in the air, and to fly in a museum of London like that, it's just crazy, amazing. The jump that I will do here from that balcony on my rollerblade, we've been calculating the exact speed, the angle of the jump. Of course, it's always scary the first time when you actually have to do it here. The speed, the guards, and then and then the jump.
Awesome.
Until now, I always been working here on the movie with wires. So if something happened, they are there to pull you. But here for the first time, there is no wire.
Much as they wanted to shoot the stunts for real, it had to be kind of broken out into components. And we achieved a lot of those on a green screen stage back in London.
Yeah, that's cool. Try to hold it for the spin. Yeah, like 67% of the fall.
I don't know if you're ever ready to be hanging on a wire 35 feet for, 16 hours a day.
Go!
I got very lucky. A lot of our riggers are from Oz, so I've worked with half of our rigging crew.
We built numerous rigs that involved treadmills that were pitched at different angles and placed separate to each other so that the stunt could be on skates and literally skate and then leap from one surface to another.
They're like, do you skateboard? Do you rollerblade? And I'm like, no, not really.
And 2, and 3, and 4.
I've had a crash course in rollerblading because I like to do all the wire work stuff because that was fun. But the skating stuff was just really coming slow. And then for whatever reason, it was one day, I just didn't take the skates off for an entire day. And then I did that almost every day. That if I wasn't at the wires, I just put on the skates and just lived in them.
It's that butterflies and Tootsie Roll.
Working on stunts and stuff on the film and seeing him up on these extraordinary wires with rollerblades on, with these sort of treadmills suspended in the air. I mean, the guy learning to rollerblade like he's something out of Starlight Express. I mean, I've never seen anything like it in my life. Next thing I knew, I was suspended about 30 meters in the air, doing somersaults through the air on a wire in a grav trough. And I just remember being up there, suspended, going, sorry, Andy, Lana, what exactly is a grav trough? Like, what should I be? How should I be sort of floating, moving? Which I thought was quite a bold idea, but the second that someone's swinging you at sort of 50 miles an hour through the air, I mean, the idea of controlling any movement is completely out of the question.
There were 2 little baby steps in there. Can you just do 1 step, plant, and then spring?
We involved trampolines, we involved wire rigs and pulls. All sorts of things that we could come up with were pretty much unique per shot or per setup.
I had to think a lot to try to advise them how we could build some ramp, improve the cable, and the crew that here are just the best in the world.
Me and the stunt guys over on C Stage, we call it C Block, and we were just grinding away, trying to come up with new stuff. We followed the previs that they gave us, and then we've elaborated on that.
He's coming at you like this, like this, like this, and it looks like he kind of starts leaning forward, and he kicks, and that's what sort of brings him around.
And we have to try to do that physically. And that was 7 months of that. And we all left literal blood and sweat over on that stage. It was hard.
We just keep filming things and hoping that it works out.
We did some stuff on this film that I don't know how we even did it by the end of the day. Like, some of it was completely rehearsed and tried to do it, and then other things we were just shooting from our head, almost couldn't replicate it once we did it once.
You sure you don't need another version, or maybe a triple Lindy off of there? Something like that?
They're adults who love comic books, and they're adults that love sci-fi, and they kind of live in that world, and they want to let everyone experience what's in their head and kind of make it be tangible and make it be palatable.
It's always interesting when you sit down with directors, especially visionaries. Even the words that they use or that they're explaining it to you or you read in a script never ever really add up to what actually comes together in the movie.
In a lot of ways, this movie is about pulling together many of the things that they've learned over the last number of years with films into something that's a very complex visual experience.
Watch this.
Jupiter!
Probably 2.5 hour read, very dense. So much of it was so outlined. And I read it and I, devoured it. It was like reading a fantastic science fiction novel. It was great.
It's not come from some comic book. It's a completely original sci-fi idea that's been put down. I don't think there's very many of those being made anymore.
I think that made us all very excited because the script is rich and it's complex, and you're not going to get it the first time you read it, but that's the mark of a piece of quality work. They don't do things that are formats, they don't do things that they've done before. In fact, they try to avoid things that have been done before.
This is a fantastic invention. I mean, the characters that you see standing around on the set are absolutely extraordinary. I think the world that they've created is completely original. You couldn't do it on stage. It would be lost on television. It's pure, pure cinema.
Maximilian obviously knows his stuff and has that obsessive streak in him. He is absolutely obsessed with our solar system and beyond, and what is out there.
Is there life on another planet? It's like, am I alone? You know, these are like religious ideas. But for the non-religious, the idea of who am I and where do I fit in the universe can be applied in a similar way. Are we alone?
He refers to the sky as being full of miracles.
It's kind of interesting as it's all about stars and planets and fate and things like that. It seemed like a little sort of miraculous sci-fi.
We did a scene the other day with some landing craft coming, and the whole thing, when you see CGI'd in, I mean, it's going to look like the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. I feel as though they're extending the barriers of the medium.
It's a world that's created in two amazing directors' minds that they've created and made to a reality. It's kind of world of the gods, that's what I'd kind of see. When you walk on set and you just see all these colourful and amazing characters that have just built from someone's imagination, and you're like, God, this world is, I want to be part of it. I want to be here for every single one. It's like, you wonder where they come from, and they're so detailed with their kind of, the way they want things to be and way things should look, that I'm just stunned.
Yep.
I loved The Neverending Story when I was a little kid. The concept of Fantasia in that movie, Neverending Story, is that Fantasia is built upon the hopes and dreams of children, so there is no boundary, you can't reach the edge of it. And I often think of that when I'm around Andy and Lana and I read their scripts or see their movies.
Start in present day, real-world Chicago. So there's a real grounding and familiarity there. But then we go off-world to a number of different worlds, in fact, that we're imagining and conceiving. And each one of them is got elements of our own architectural, costume, art and design incorporated in them, and even mythology. It works as a viewer because you're familiar with it, but it also is suggesting that that is actually where the origins of especially our mythology and lore come from, and even some of our inspirations for architecture, art and design have actually come from these places off-world. We've somehow had some connection that we don't know how.
According to Commonwealth records, this planet was seeded by brass axe industries roughly 100,000 years ago. Human DNA spliced with indigenous species to evolve a fertile population. Andy and Lana, I mean, they've got a vision which is, a very original and kind of, as I said, kind of groundbreaking vision. It's deep, it's profound, it's got original ideas, it's got a surreal quality which I find fascinating and so challenging to work on. And that's what they're doing. I think that's very brave of them. It's using your imagination and kind of jumping into something you don't know, really. Just giving it a try, because if you don't, then it's just going to be normal, it's going to be boring.
There are several different planets and worlds that Jupiter visits when she's escorted from Earth. The idea is when we first got to the read-through, there was all these collages of what the worlds might look like, and it was just, everyone was blown away. We were just mouths to the floor. Where we're filming today, this is kind of an example of where she might hang out, what might be in her palace. Whereas some of the other worlds are slightly more teched out or driven towards technology.
Because we each have our own ships and our own agendas.
I had planned to take you myself, but the Aegis will undoubtedly insist they handle things from here.
Jupiter can inherit whatever planet that she is born on. She can only inherit that if she makes it to the Hall of Titles. And the Hall of Titles is on Oros, which is essentially the very first Earth. It's the very first one that has industrialized certain things.
I don't know what goes on in their heads, but it's kind of an amazing world.
Even when I was seeing all the concept art, like you see Belem, and his ship's dark, and all his sort of servants are sort of ugly-looking aliens, and it's all very stern.
Not my brother or my sister.
The Wachowskis have created this world in which, in space, you have these great dynasties of families who all have different trades and wealth.
They're part of this royal family that own these planets.
The Abrasax one is harvesting these planets and using distilled serum of the bodies from these planets to create a sort of rejuvenating serum.
Within the universe and the cosmos, people want to live longer. They want to, dying's, they don't want to do that anymore. So they're sort of supplying this business, but to do this, they have to harvest whole planets at a time. And Earth is soon coming into line to be harvested, but Belem owns the Earth. It's going to be like big for him within the market.
Belem has many of these all across the universe, many of these different plants or refineries. Chicanery runs one of these kind of plants where they take human beings and make them into whatever this essence is that keeps Belem youthful. So he just runs the day-to-day running of one of these refineries. That's his job. And it just so happens in this particular story, Belem is visiting this particular refinery at this point, which is Earth's refinery.
Belem's obsession is profit, and the idea that through evolution and profiting in a sort of Darwinian sense, or profiting financially, is the only way to move forward in the world. It's an incredibly cold, cruel, mercenary look on the world versus Jupiter's one of love and learning to love.
Life is an act of consumption, Jupiter.
Because science fiction was a way to infuse political ideas because it was disguised as this crazy genre, old science fiction is rife with this type of insurgency, political insurgency. What a great milieu to be able to talk about ideas. Relevant ideas, like, the ideas of class and, of course, spiritual ideas like reincarnation. It's a very profound idea. And when you imagine the vastness of space, the exploration of it.
What Lana and Andy do so well is that they take this, I suppose, populist genre and manage to feed in elements of real meaning and their take on the world.
They're kind of geeky about it, but that's exactly how you would want somebody to be if you're making a sci-fi film.
To them, it's every day. It's sort of pedestrian. Lana will be standing next to you, and she'll have like the term for whatever it is. You'll be like, "Do these really exist? Is this a real thing, or is this just in your head?" She'll just look at you and go, "Yeah."
It's a sci-fi, and I think it's something they do really well. I think they have a real passion for it, and I think that's so important.
There's a satisfaction in perfecting your art. They're absolutely driven by that. And, there's risk with that. But that risk is exciting and very satisfying.
Tonight the sky is completely full of miracles.